y'all. I'm excited to be on the live with you. I'm looking forward to sharing more about this workshop with those of you who are interested. My name is Tejal. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm coming to you today from the unceded lands of the Tongva, the Chumash, and the Kizh people, colonially known as Los Angeles, California. And I really wanted to get on this IG Live to answer your questions about the upcoming So You Want to Chant Om workshops. They're happening May 18th and 19th. So a few weekends from now, I'll be offering workshops virtually on Zoom with the suggestion to attend live if you can. And I'm really excited about offering these workshops. Just so you know, this is a little bit of my signature workshop, if you ever heard that language before. And it's called that because I've offered it so many times through teacher trainings, through my own platform, Tejal Yoga. And at this point, there are over 200 people that have gone through these workshops. And when I first started offering So You Want to Chant Om and Namaste using spiritual terms with respect, the workshop was probably 2 hours. Maybe that's the shortest it's ever been. But it is now 5 hours of material because of all the many, many considerations that go into how we chant. And this one single focused element of cultural appropriation. Chanting comes to us through many, many Eastern practices. It comes to us from indigenous culture, essentially noise, vibration, chanting. What we say in Sanskrit is mantra, and it's a connection of mind and spirit. And when we chant, there are many, many reasons we chant. I'd like to focus our time and energy in the workshops on chanting of Om and chanting of Namaste. The first part of the workshops is a focus on Om, and what we will learn from there is many different ways we can expand our context on the use of the chant, the many, many meanings and applied meanings that Om actually carries, how it is a chant of the 4/4, where you might look at the symbol or syllable of Om and just think, well, that's just a really short chant. It gives me a lot of peace, and there's a lot of energetic felt vibration, and that's enough. That's been lovely to this point. What I'd like to offer you is even more about Om, even more of the ways we can consider it, how we might infuse it into our everyday life and our practice, and the different applied meanings that you can bring towards your mantra chanting of Om. We know it to be this eternal, timeless resonance, and we might even ascribe it to a particular way of being in your life, or a particular moment of peace or invitation into your life. But there's a lot of depth, and it goes much, much deeper. So that's really part one of the workshops. And part two is around Namaste. But I'll just take a moment to welcome everyone who's joined and ask you to drop into the chat, maybe a check-in on how you're doing, how your day is going so far, what you're moving forward with in today. So first, I'll invite a deep breath in and a clearing breath out. You might even do that a few more times depending on where you're at. Oh, it's so nice to hear from you, Tanuja. I would love to connect to you in the workshops again. One, I miss you. Two, I want to catch up with you. And three, us having this shared language around the material would be so incredible. I think not only for the South Asian teacher community, but also for all the people we interact with and share space with. If anyone is interested in registering and needs financial consideration, this applies to anyone experiencing hardship through caste-related or race-based or ethnic-based stress and trauma. It could be through unstable like working accommodations. It could be because of the underlying truth that our most marginalized community tends to be those with intersectional identities. So anyone who carries intersecting identities and is feeling any kind of financial strain or hardship, please do reach out personally, and we'll talk about either a payment plan or a pricing accommodation. The workshops themselves are priced at a price point that accommodates 5 hours of continuing ed. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about any questions you have about structure or framework, anything at all. I also wanted to be really clear that in this conversation in IG Live, I am specifically focused on this topic of the workshops, but if there's anything else coming up for you that you want to bring to the surface, or you want to share in the chat, or even let me know that you want to join this live, I'm open to just connecting right now. We're caring so much. In this morning's meditation, I offered the reminder that yes, the lilacs are blooming and the sun is shining for some of us. Someone dropped into meditation and said they woke up to snowfall where they were, and both of these things are true at the same time. We can be in snowfall, we can have lilacs blooming, we can be really awake to the injustices in the world right now. We can be very aware and present and active in fighting those injustices, and there is snowfall and there are lilacs blooming. So we carry multitudes, and we are well aware of all the things that are happening in the world, and we persist. Yeah, Jay Wiley B, thanks for asking where we register. Absolutely, you register on the website. If you click the link in the bio, tejalyoga.com/now, you just scroll a little bit, you'll see events, and it's one of the listed events. So from that place, you can click to open the event and read more. And then you'll get a lot more in-depth information that I don't have memorized for this live, and then the link to register if you're interested. I am talking about these workshops I'm offering on May 18th and 19th that will start at 8 a.m. Pacific and run until 10:30 Pacific, which is 11 a.m. Eastern until 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And then 8 a.m. Pacific is 8 hours forward for British summertime. So the math is not mathing in my head right now, but plus 8 hours. And then that means we'll meet on Saturday and Sunday for a total of 5 hours. Yes, of course, there will be a break during each of those sessions, and there will be time for breakout rooms and discussion with one another. So if your plan is to register but receive the recordings, which will become available Monday the 20th, that's fine. Just know it won't be a full 5 hours of experiential interactive workshop for you. It will just be, webinar series without the breakout room discussion, since you'll be reviewing a recording. So part 1 on Saturday will be all about understanding Om, getting deeper with the context, bringing in different references for more opinions and points of view. One thing I want to point out is that the way I like to offer education around our practices of yoga is to offer that there are multiple opinions, right? There are multiple points of view. There are different ways to translate these very deep and oftentimes like intangible, hard to pin down teachings, and that's okay. Like, we can exist with that expansiveness. We do it all the time in our day-to-day, whether we know it or not. We don't address everything to finite conclusion, and we move on, and we exist with that reality. So I want to bring more context to us as a group. I want us to take time and space for reflection, journaling, but also discussion with one another. And day 2, after we move through kind of the overview and structure in day 1, we'll start day 2 with a really in-depth dive into the use of Namaste. We will talk about the meaning. We'll talk about the translation of the meaning over time, where we might have explored a meaning for Namaste through our teacher's eyes and lens, and where we might be able to add more context to that. Outside of that, we will bring it home to a very different lens, I think, than we might be used to. But this is really where I'd like to invite people into not just working with these practices as if they are ancient and only embodied. They are ancient. We work to embody these practices, but also there is an application in society that can be very questionable around the practices that we love and cherish so much. We might be upholding these more oppressive practices. We might be aware of them, but have moved away from them in our own community building. But I want to bring it to the front and center of our conversation about half the time on Sunday when we meet. So about an hour will be dedicated to the timeline that has created a narrative around the use of Namaste in certain scopes and places. What are the political motivations for that? And what else is at play? So we'll discuss concepts like colonialism and neo-colonialism. We'll discuss Hindutva or nationalist political movements and how this takes a part in the narrative on yoga, which might sound surprising, but it's actually embedded in the educational systems, it's embedded in our governmental systems, and so the practices and policies that come from those institutions dictate a lot of how we understand yoga, might be exposed to it, and set us up for knowing what we might need to work to undo if we are in communities where we are not upholding those policies and procedures, and we want to be inviting people into different ways of upholding yoga practices and philosophy. So I'll take a pause there and just see if there are any other thoughts or questions that you have. Based on a previous question, you can sign up with your interest on the website. You can just share your interest, or you can sign up right away. You have the opportunity to email me if you have any questions. That link is also in my Instagram bio, which if you go to it now, you'd leave the live. I will be posting this live for everyone to be able to reference after the fact, because the likelihood that we're all available 8 a.m. Pacific on a Friday morning to check this out is very slim. And then I probably want to spend just 5 minutes maybe going through what people have already asked me. And I'd like to address that in case you also have had the same questions about why these workshops called So You Want to Chant Om and Namaste could be useful to you. So there are several groups of people that are interested in understanding using spiritual terms with respect. So one person wrote in that they want to be able to share this information with their team of teachers, which I think is valid, 100%. We want to get information, we want to let that information sink in, and then we want to teach from a place where that feels like something we're practicing. So wanting to share information with your team is wonderful. First and foremost, you want to learn that information for yourself, put it into practice, make some valuable connections through these workshops with people that you might be able to come back to from conversation, support, whatever you need after you start to build a foundation of what I offer you, and then start to question it, start to pick at it, and start to notice how you can implement if that's something you wish to do. From that place, yes, 1000%, please share as much as this information that feels embodied for you with the people you work with the students that you have, and continue to practice with and educate. I have a comment here that says, I want to learn. I will not use Om or Namaste until I feel confident that it's appropriate for me to use, and I fully understand their context in my yoga practice as a white person. And this is not an unusual comment, people recognizing their positionality, their different identities, calling themselves white and also teaching yoga, and then restricting themselves from using certain elements of the practice because they know they want to further their understanding and deepen their context. In this example, we're talking directly about using Om and using Namaste when you teach. So some things that we'll talk about in terms of not just learning how to chant it properly, how to pronounce it properly. I'm not even sure that comes up, but my use of the terms is so repetitive that I think that lands for people. But this idea of wanting to learn and then not using the terms until you feel it's appropriate is actually something pretty common. Like I've heard that a lot in my conversations with teachers, that sometimes they just remove parts of the practice completely until they feel really grounded and capable of explaining a lot of elements around whatever it is they've removed. Maybe it's the use of Sanskrit. Maybe it's naming the poses in Sanskrit, not just chanting. Maybe it's actually practicing a pose or offering a pose that they don't know how to do, that they don't perform fully. And so one of the ways we can help integrate this information and deepen our understanding around what the question, like, what do I do if I don't feel fully educated on this topic in yoga, is to start dismantling perfectionism. Another one of my favorite topics to talk about is perfectionism, and how perfectionism is a tool and is a trait of white supremacy culture. That's not to say we should go around and tell people things that are false or untrue or that we aren't entirely sure about. But there is no hard and fast rule that I want to offer you. So when it comes to dismantling perfectionism, we want to develop an awareness around why we aren't doing something, acknowledge where those gaps exist, and then build an action plan around what we might want to do to bolster our education, confidence, and knowledge in those areas. And then it's not as easy as implementing that action. It's also assessing how that action landed and assessing for impact with the intended audiences, with yourself, and coming back to a praxis of assessment and action, and just continuing to understand what it is we're trying to deepen our knowledge on and maybe potentially put out into the world. So definitely appreciate this comment that says, I will not use Om or Namaste until I feel confident it's appropriate for me to use them and I fully understand their context in my yoga practice as a white person. And I 100% appreciate it. You can also swap out white person there for a South Asian person of the diaspora, for someone who has just started teaching, for someone who has been teaching for 20 years but is now just waking up to the conversation around deepening context and taking in more opinions and more schools of thought around what we've been completely grounded in and built as our foundation. So that comment is really wonderful. I just wanted to address it to all of us because no matter who you are, you might have that concern. Someone wrote in that they want to take these workshops to learn more and connect with myself, ancestors, and ancestral traditions in a good way. I think that's so lovely. I think if I needed to label myself, I would label myself as a seeker. And one of the things that I'm constantly seeking is ancestral connection, right? Connection to traditions that are not completely impacted or co-opted by colonialism and white supremacy culture. So I completely connect to this comment of wanting to learn more and connect with myself, ancestors, and ancestral traditions in a good way. Part of that too is recognizing who has been teaching you ancestral traditions and whether or not that feels aligned for you. So I want to recognize that you might have the best teachers in the whole world, but maybe a tiny missing piece is that you don't feel a cultural connection, or you don't feel a lived experience relationship and similarity with your teachers. And I've heard that along the way in my career of teaching yoga. I've been teaching yoga over 10 years. And I recognize that this is almost just as important as the quality of the material you're learning. Like being able to connect with those administering the information helps your body feel at ease, helps your mind take in the information in a deeper way. It varies for every individual, but it is a very important element of how we learn information. So another reason that I like to offer these workshops is because I am South Asian and a South Asian yoga teacher. And I could keep this information to myself. I could spend all my time thinking through like how I want to offer this to my students or teachers around me. But I do think it's very important to share it as widely as possible with the identities that I hold. Another question I received about why someone might want to take the So You Want to Chant Om and Namaste workshops is around the fact that they're currently completing 200-hour YTT or yoga teacher training and want to be culturally informed. So what that tells me is that their 200-hour yoga teacher training does not have any components that help them to feel culturally informed about a practice that comes from a place with a culture. So one of the things I like to highlight is that yoga comes to us from South Asia, and there is a rich cultural history there, many cultural traditions that interweave with the practices of yoga and the way yoga is meant to be practiced or meant to be understood. And that meant to be is really, there is a wide range of how we are meant to understand the practices. But when yoga translated and transferred and was brought over here, some of those teachers did not maintain that cultural connection to the place where yoga comes from. And instead, yoga has then been slotted into existing dominant wellness culture and fitness culture. Therefore, slicing down yoga, slimming it down, like really just trimming it down to an aspect of yoga or a part of the yoga teaching and traditions that comes through during a class or an online practice. And so offering ourselves time and space and budget to take workshops can really be beneficial when you recognize that the way you're being taught about yoga, the way you are practicing yoga, does not have a culturally informed path. So I really honor that that is something this student is seeking, and that I'm really happy they have a place they can come to for that. We have some simple check-ins that are just a topic that someone's been wanting to learn more about for a while. And that's really the beauty of the yoga practice. It's so vast and expansive that we can learn 200 hours of material. We can learn 300 hours of material. We can continue to build on that journey. But over time, we'll find ourselves gravitating towards specific elements that we want to dive deeper into. And so I'm really happy to offer this specific look into cultural appropriation around chanting Om and Namaste. And then finally, I want to share this comment that also resonated with me, which is, candidly, I've been out of practice for several years now. I've been pretty consumed by work, and it's had a detrimental impact on my physical and mental health. I'd like to just start over and really immerse myself in the practice. I'd like to best educate myself on the true culture of yoga and ensure I am practicing in a respectful and nuanced manner that doesn't appropriate it in any way. So I really love that comment because it's very thought out and it tells me a little bit of the practice history, but also the life, the life impacts. Being overly consumed by work, to your definition, for this person had a detrimental impact on their physical and mental health. That being the second thing they shared with me, and the first thing they shared being, I've been out of practice for several years. So the relationship for me is very clear. Being out of practice isn't the reason why they've been pretty consumed by work. One doesn't create the other, but one happened and then the other happened concurrently. And that impact on physical and mental health has been negative in their opinion. So they'd like to start fresh. Maybe they're resetting a little bit of their work boundaries if possible, but it definitely sounds like they're stepping back into a yoga practice, which I really appreciate. And at the same time, they want to immerse themselves on the true culture of yoga. So it sounds like this period of being away has exposed them to maybe some of the gaps in their yoga education, yoga practice, and yoga philosophy teaching and embodiment. And so they understand that at this point, when they're starting over, quote unquote, they want to immerse themselves in deeper education, more nuanced education, in a manner that doesn't appropriate in any way. So there's a couple things I want to debunk from here, which is the idea that you need to start over. One of my favorite passages from the Bhagavad Gita is chapter 2, verse 40. And the translation there is, on this spiritual path, no gain is ever reversed. No effort is ever wasted. Only a little of this work can undo great suffering and harm. And so I want to close with this comment because I want to share with you all something really powerful that I've worked to really invite into my practice and keep with me, which is there is no concept of starting over. We start when we started, and that was when we were born into this world. And every moment after that is a moment of learning and growth, right? It can be both. It can be just learning. It can be growth from what you learned. But this idea that you've been on pause and so now it's erased what you've learned and grown into means you need to start over is not true. Like, we have so much we carry within ourselves and our memories that come to us from our ancestors. It comes to us intergenerationally. There's no real starting over. And so this passage from the Bhagavad Gita that reminds us that no gain is ever reversed and no effort is ever wasted feels like, honestly, the most hopeful thing I can carry with me at any given time, especially in a time of great worldly conflict that we're in. And I want to offer that thought back to this person and to anyone listening that it might be helpful for. Whether you've fallen away from the practice, whether you feel like what you've learned needs to be undone in any way, none of the gains that you've experienced and none of the effort that you put in is ever reversed or wasted. All of that energy, all of that positive outcome and result, that stays with you. And that continues to stay with you, and it continues to move through into your ancestors. Move forward into your future ancestors, as well as this idea that we can't. So that's one point. And then the second point is that this person is being conscious and aware of the fact that appropriation exists and would like to start over in a way that doesn't appropriate yoga practices in any way. And so I just want to say that that's like virtually impossible depending on our definition and depending on whether or not we care about other people's definition. And I think that we should absolutely care about what the communities around us are saying around authentic teaching and practice of yoga. And we should really be true to our own definition. Letting our own definition expand and grow as we learn more and as we expand and grow is also really pivotal and important. So I just say all that to remind us that, we can never be 100% perfect because we live in a moving world, because we live in an ever-changing landscape of thought and practice and philosophy and community that shifts and grows over time. So I wanted to just share those few questions people have for me about these workshops, hoping it might answer some of your questions. And I am offering these workshops, so you want to chant Om and Namaste, May 18th and May 19th. So not this weekend, but next weekend. And I really invite you to learn more and ask me any questions you have through my email or my contact form on my website, which is linked in the bio. And if you're interested in signing up, you can do that on the link in bio. Just scroll down, you'll see the event listed, and you'll be able to click through to secure your spots. I do advise that you can attend live, so you get the full 5 hours of education and community building and contemplative thought, space holding. If you can't attend live, yes, definitely reserve. You will get the recordings on Monday, May 20th. And it'll just be short of 5 hours. It won't be full 5 hours of education because those breakout room discussions will happen live and they won't be part of the recording. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great Friday, if it's Friday for you. If it's already tomorrow for you, let me know how Saturday is going and how your Friday went. Take care, y'all. Appreciate you being here.